All right, the new California Rockfish Regulations have finally been posted. If you've been following along this year, it's been a roller coaster for sure. If you don't want to watch the whole video, here's a quick recap of what changed from last year. You have to have a descending device on your boat. Quillback or a no-take fish. Can't keep quillback. The cowcod conservation areas have shrunk quite a bit. They kept some little areas because they want to preserve some coral. There's two groups of fish. Think of them separately for when and which side of the contour lines you can keep them. It's important that you know these tables. There's a new 20 fathom contour line that comes into play up north. You better know what rockfish are which, and you better know when you can take which ones and where. It's confusing. The vermilion bag limit has dropped from 4 fish to 2 fish in all but the northern management area. This is really all you need to know if you already know last year's rules. I'll take a like and a subscribe if you want to leave now. If you want to learn more or dig a little deeper, I'll go into all the regulations now. Good times. Oh, there's a good one. Doubled up on the reds. No bait, just a jig. Oh, that feels good. 1 red, 2 reds.
Right there, baby.
All right, this is it. We're doing it. All right, it's going down. Okay, let's dig into the regulations. First, here's a couple things that I learned this year. There's 2 agencies that collaborate to come up with these rules. There's the national arm, the Federal Pacific Fisheries Management Council, and the state arm, the California Fish and Game Commission. Yes, the commission still has game in its name. It wasn't a mistake. It seems to me that the federal group does a lot of the research that looks at how all of the rockfish are doing. Something I also learned, which many of you may already know, is that in 1976, there was a federal act passed, the Magnuson Fishery Conservation Act, that says that we have to manage all fisheries to have long-term sustainability. It's the law that all states manage the fisheries accordingly. That's why we have no-take fish and why we can only fish certain areas during certain times of year. If you want to know where I got most of my intel, besides the Fish and Wildlife website, I sat and talked with Louie Zimm recently. He sits on the board of the Federal Pacific Fishery Management Council. I recorded our conversation, and if you're a rockfish nerd like I am, then you can click on the link in the description and give that discussion a watch. There's a lot that went into making these rules that aren't mentioned here. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay, let's get into it. Did you know that these regulations are for people fishing from boats? Shore-based anglers and spearfishermen are exempt from these rules. The state is broken up into 6 management areas. Each of those areas has a different set of regulations. You can go to the Fish and Wildlife website to get your specific regulations. Descending devices. New this year is that you have to have a descending device on your boat. The regs aren't very clear on what type of device or even that you actually need to use it. There's some pretty cost-effective ones and free ones out there. I'm just going to have one rigged up on my boat and then send any of the fish that I don't want to keep or that are over limits down. Once you get into the routine of doing it, it's actually pretty easy to do. The intent is to not kill fish that we're not keeping. Here comes mine. Let's see what I got. It's big Picaccio. No-take species. For all the management areas, there are some no-take fish. If you catch one of these, stick them on a descender and send them back down. These fish are the bronze-spotted rockfish, the cowcod, new since the middle of last year is the quillback, and the yellow eye rockfish. So, stick these fish in your memory banks and don't keep them.
Slow and steady wins the race.
What, where, and when you can catch. This is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. There's a lot to digest here. First of all, there are some areas such as MPRs and cowcod conservation zones that are always no-take zones. See the Fish and Wildlife website for these areas. They have a pretty good interactive map that shows where these are. This year, some positivity is that the cowcod conservation zone shrunk a lot. I think as much as 4,000 square miles were given back to us. To keep up with the rest of the conversation, you'll need to understand the depth boundary lines. There's a boundary line at 20 fathoms and one at 50 fathoms. The 20 fathom line is only in effect north of the 36 degree north latitude line, a little north of San Simeon. These are a bunch of GPS points defined by the Code of Federal Regulations that give us the depth boundary lines. They're off the coast, off the islands, and off Tenor and Cortez banks. So, when the regulations say inshore of the 20 fathom line or offshore from the 50 fathom line, it's not how deep you're allowed to fish, it's which side of the boundary line you're on. That's a really important concept to know. For all management zones, the rockfish rules are split into two groups, the nearshore group and the offshore group that has the shelf, slope, and lingcod. The Fish and Wildlife website has some great fish identification sheets if you don't know your rockfish species. I recommend laminating them and keeping them on your boat, or screenshotting them on your phone so that you have them that way. Since the regulations are split into the nearshore and offshore groups, each group of fish should be thought of separately. Last year, I was focused on whether I could fish on one side of the contour line or the other and didn't pay attention to which rockfish I was catching. This year, and probably last, if you read the regs thoroughly, we're supposed to pay attention to the type of fish and which side of the contour line we can fish on. For example, if we're allowed to fish inshore and we catch a lingcod, technically, we have to let it go as that group of fish is prohibited to take. I think that would take effect in April, October, and December above the 36-degree north line. I'll take it. Now, when and where can you fish? This is complicated. I made these tables to help me out. I think a lot of this has to do with the 1976 Magnuson Fishery Conservation Act and the fact that quillback aren't doing so hot right now. They mostly live north of the 36-degree north latitude line between 20 and 50 fathoms. That's why the central, south, and southern management areas don't have the 20 fathom line. Let's just sit and digest these tables for a minute. Feel free to hit pause or take a screenshot. It is complicated. Bag limits, size limits, and filleting rules. Now, for all zones, there's a 10 fish bag limit on rockfish, cabezon, and greenlings. You can have any combination of these fish except you are only allowed to have one copper rockfish, chucklehead, and two vermilion, reds. The two vermilion is new this year, so pay attention. For some reason, the regulations for the northern management area allow 4 vermilion like last year. They must be thriving up there. I wonder if that was a mistake though. In addition to the 10 rockfish, you're allowed to have 2 lingcod per person. There isn't a size limit on the rockfish, but if you want to keep a cabezon, it has to be 15-inch total length. If you want to keep a kelp and or rock greenlings, they have to be 12-inch in length, and lingcods have to be at least 22 inches. If you're going to fillet any fish, the rockfish don't have a minimum length on the fillets, but you have to leave all of their skin attached. For the cabezon and greenlings, you're not allowed to fillet them. Don't think about it. For the lingcod, the fillet has to be at least 14 inches long, and you have to leave a 1-inch square patch of skin on each fillet. I know that was a lot, but that pretty much sums it up. Through my discussions with Louie, I really believe the people making up these rules have our best interests at heart. They want to let us fish, but they're kind of tied by that Magnuson Act that says that they have to protect individual species. With all that said, this is the best for all of us. We got to do what we got to do to keep the fish populations up. Good luck out there. The 20 fathom line is only in effect north of the 36-degree north latitude line, a little north of San Simeon. These are a bunch of GPS points defined by the Code of Federal Regulations that give us the depth boundary lines. They're off the coast, off the islands, and off Tenor and Cortez banks. So, when the regulations say inshore of the 20 fathom line or offshore from the 50 fathom line, it's not how deep you're allowed to fish,